Today we are going to be talking about cultural trends and personal trends affecting single adult ministry and the church, and how we minister to single adults, and how we should address those cultural changes and trends. So let's start with some personal trends. I'd like to have you identify some personal trends today and some possible solutions or suggestions to help those trends, to meet those trends. So let's start over here. Darcy, why don't you tell us one?
I'd be glad to. Dennis, I certainly hear a lot of people who are singles are interested in dating. And so they're looking around, seeing who they could date. And many times they're saying to me they don't see anybody. And so they're saying they still want to date somebody. So the trend is going to the internet. There's a lot of internet sites available for checking out and connecting with individuals. That's what they're wanting, is friendships, connecting, relationships, future potentials. Now in that trend, it could be dangerous. So I think as a singles ministry, we can openly talk about what are some ways to be involved with internet dating in a safeguard manner. So that would be one of the things I would begin talking about in our singles ministry.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And I think that another trend that we're experiencing is that the healthier that a single adult is, the less likely it is that they're going to come to a single adult ministry. And so your single adult ministry, by default, ends up being a hospital. And I think the way we change that trend is that we speak above the issues, we speak into the spiritual life of Christians in general. We provide ministry opportunities outside the singles ministry, where we are an extension of the church. We also are constantly encouraging people to be involved in other ministries, and so that we are bigger than just the needs that our single adults, or we perceive single adults, have, because there's a lot of other opportunities that single adults can be involved in besides just coming to get healed in a particular way.
Very good. Rich, can you think of a personal trend? Cultural change.
Well, I think, Dennis, it's no doubt about it that singles are waiting a lot longer now to get married than they did, say, 30, 40 years ago. I think right now the median age for first-time marriages for our singles is about between 27 and 28 years old, respectively, for men and women. And I think this posits a real challenge to our leaders of singles in that we have to keep them on the road of serving Christ, growing spiritually, spiritual formation, and to take the time to really instill and to teach biblical values in dating and in engagement, in relationships in general. And I know that cohabitation is a huge issue nowadays. Mm-hmm. That is living together before marriage.
Yes, it certainly is. And I'm becoming more and more passionate about helping people understand the dangers and the risks of cohabitation. Many of you may know this, but the latest 2012 figures show 7 out of 10, 75% of people who cohabitate, even for a short period of time, 7 out of 10 will break up before or after marriage. But of course, that's not what people think. They think they're the exception. Oh, that's not me. We're going to make it. But cohabitation, you're right, is a huge issue, not just for 20s and 30s, but 40s, 50s, and 60s, and somebody said even 70s, who are living together, playing house. It's not an I do, it's an I might. So how do we help them understand cohabitation? I think you hit on one thing: teaching, showing the risks and dangers, having people come up and testify and say what they have, how their experience with cohabitation, and then it broke up. Having them say their regrets and their remorse about doing it, and some of the issues there.
Yeah, along with that, another trend that we find is that single adults still experience tremendous financial pressure. Particularly, we've seen this as a result of the recent recession that we've come through, or still in by some definition. And we have seen an tremendous increase in the number of people who are either unemployed or underemployed and trying to accomplish the same thing with the same dollars that they had before, or even greater challenges with the same dollars. I think that we need to include financial teaching, instructions on budgeting, instructions on job skills. These aren't necessarily secular ideas. These are spiritual ideas, and we don't always have to be talking about relationships. We can talk about some very practical helps that will encourage our single adults to be able to engage effectively in the world, engage effectively in their future, and be able to then contribute to the single adult ministry and the church at large. That's how you set them up for success in the future. And that's also how you bring and you become a magnet for successful single adults that are already have succeeded in their business world. They'll love to come to programs that echo those kinds of principles because they believe in them.
Mm-hmm. Rich, didn't you mention something earlier about poverty, financial poverty?
Yes, and really, and speaking also to what Craig has just mentioned, I agree wholeheartedly. We've known, for instance, single parents, single moms, those who have gone through divorce or who have been widowed. They depended upon their spouse for years and years and years to bring the support to the family. And when they're widowed or even widowers are finding a lot of trouble maintaining a household, especially when you've got younger children at home, and of course a lot of singles who have gotten married, unfortunately, out of wedlock. They are single parents. I believe the ministry and the church needs to have some vehicle in place in which we could bring tangible help through as Craig has said, job training or education to re-enter or to enter the workforce in some way, and to bring a positive effect, not only to singles in general, but also the church.
In one of the other training videos that we've done that are online on the site, we've mentioned the step families, some of the resources. Kevin mentioned Ron Deal's book. I mentioned Don Partridge's book, Loving Your Step Family, The Smart Step Family by Ron Deal, which brings us to something I believe Karen said earlier, and you just hit on it. They remarry. What happens, Karen, when they remarry and they bring children into marriage? You've had some experience with that.
Yeah, single, more and more families that are coming together, or couples that are coming together, they're single, they've got kids, they're combining households, and that is not easy. And we've got to be able to, first of all, even before they get married, if they're thinking about getting married, have the resources to understand what they're getting into, because if you've never been in that situation before, you don't know what you're getting into. And even though you think you might know the other person's kids, it's a whole different ball game. And it can cause some issues, and you want to help them to succeed. So being single and then and having kids and bringing a family together, there's a blended families curriculum. I'm not sure what that is, but that's something I want to look into, looking at all the things that we're doing and helping them to succeed as families, because the kids need attention just as much as the singles need attention. You're looking at a whole different, so having counseling, having people that are seasoned in that, drawing on other people's wisdom that have been there and done that, you've got to pull all your stops out, because you've got to be able to help them combine those families and to come together as a family unit.
A good suggestion that we have tried in the past was to have a remarried couple or two or three come into the single adult group and talk about the challenges, talk about some of the issues they're facing and how they've worked through them, and their realization that they didn't know much about this before they got into it. By the way, some good discussion books that we have at the national office, Savvy Partnering by Don Partridge. They are all three of these books, one on dating, one on engagement, and one on merging your families. Discussion questions on a myriad of issues that they discuss before they get married, before they get engaged, and while they're dating. 3 different books. Have any of you have any other suggestions on this step family? Anything you've done to help them? You said premarital counseling, Karen?
Well, I believe in the power of networking, and a church is probably the best environment for networking to take place in. If you're going to have a big brother or big sister program, why not do it in your church? Why not adopt that as part of the effort to help the step parents or help the single parents to adapt to the situation? Grandmas and grandpas who have given a life of proven Christian character and integrity now are looking for a way to give back, and it's a tremendous opportunity. The networking opportunity is great in the churches, and that's, I think, what a single adult ministry can do. Even if they don't have a particular singles leader, lay leadership can still be involved in helping people network for the single adult parenting issues.
There really are a lot of cultural changes and trends affecting single adult ministry today. We've mentioned many of them, but there are still more. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about societal trends and family trends and how they affect the church and our ministry to them. And is the church actually doing something to meet those? Kathy, you had said something earlier.
I did. You know, I'm seeing the trends. We've talked about the trends. We've talked about the continuum of all the areas that singles ministry is reaching the family. And the family dynamics has changed tremendously over the last 20 years. You have single parents that have never been married. You have blended families. You have single grandparents raising children. And that's just one of the dynamics. In the state of Washington now we have legalized homosexual marriage with children involved. You have all of those types of societal family units now, and I don't think the church has come up to speed in ministering to those needs. They're strong on youth, they're strong on children, they're strong on the family, but I don't think they really understand the dynamics of what being strong on family is now. And the church needs to come up to speed and really understand how that has changed in society and in culture, and then bring the biblical perspective of having to meet those new needs.
Are you saying that when you say the church isn't up to speed, I want to be specific, are you saying that the church is focusing mainly more on nuclear families and not so much on step and blended and single parent and grandparent families, these majority other families?
I think the statistics show that the nuclear family is 24%?
Yeah.
24% of what the actual family unit is now in our culture. And if the church is only meeting the nuclear family, they're only reaching 24%. And if their focus is having a strong family church, they have a lot of work ahead of them.
Yes, we sure do. Okay, this kind of moves us into the family societal leadership trends and meeting these needs. What cultural trends, cultural changes do you see that are affecting us in our ministry to single adults, kind of hinging on what Kathy says? What would you see over here, Darcy or Rich, something that would relate to this?
Well, I think there's a need for some communication skills for singles to learn about what they can do to better communicate, to help them even address issues, conflicts. I think it's just one little mechanism, is better communication skills that helps them build better friendships, better base of being able to communicate your ups and downs or your feelings and express it to others.
How do we help them with communication skills? What suggestions could we give leaders?
I'd like to cover that.
Yeah.
And I believe there are a lot of good communication programs out there. Even on that is leadership skills, leadership development, how to communicate. And Dennis Frank, actually, you have built or created some curricula that's all about building, becoming a better leader. In fact, we've had Dennis Frank come to South Dakota and speak to our leadership team, and that was extremely encouraging for everyone who had participated in that. So it was learning, better understanding singles, along with being able to better communicate is one of the mechanisms.
And we also have had Dennis out at several times for training, and I think one of the things we learn at these, whether it's a weekend training or a one-day training, if you are serious about single adult ministry, you have to come to grips with the fact that there are some things about society, some trends that you're not going to be able to stop. And I think part of that is part of the biblical process. God knows. But I think the important thing to recall, and really, to be honest, churches are not hiring full-time singles pastors at present as they have in the past 30 or 40 years. But the need is still there. The need to teach single adults about all the various aspects of life that we've talked about. Not only that, but to be a part of the lives of their children and to provide them with the same teaching. So we need skilled leaders, lay leaders. That's a term that I hear a lot. To step forward with integrity and with excellent communication skills to be able to carry the ball and take it forward into the future.
One of you said earlier, who was it? One of you said we hire for passion, or we recruit for passion, and we train for skills. Elaborate on that. Was that you, Craig?
Well, I think that's true. You do hire for passion, and because that's going to be the motivation that keeps a person interested, and where God really touches their heart. And there is a trend that has been very difficult to deal with as a pastor in the last several years in the recession, of simply having to lay people off because of basic financial budget issues. This cannot be avoided. You have to deal with that. But let me say that when that happens, it's an opportunity. God gives these things as opportunities for those that are gifted with passion to step in and fill the spaces. And I would just encourage every leader of a single adult ministry to not perceive the downsizing of the full-time ministry as a negative, but instead see it as an opportunity for you to fill the role of a singles minister in a volunteer way. Find the tools that are offered with on the Assemblies of God website to become trained, and step up into that passion. For such a time as this, God has called you to really step forward and be the leader that He's asked you to be.
This move that you referred to, from hiring to using leadership within the church, recruiting leadership, like you said, you can recruit passion. As Rich said, we need to have. They're letting go of singles pastors, so we need to recruit people and train them, and that is so good. But when it comes to training, I think Karen mentioned something earlier about gifted or credibility. Something about credibility. What were you saying earlier?
You've got to have credible people, because single people, everybody needs safety, but single people especially are coming in. They're already coming in not trusting. They don't trust. They've been hurt for one thing or another, or whatever their circumstances are. You've got to have a leader that's credible, that is somebody that you know. If it's a male, it's better to have male and female, but if you've just got a male, he's got to be somebody that's not on the prowl. You've got a woman that they can't feel like if somebody needs to come and talk to them, they can't feel like, well, do they have different motives? They can't be questioning your leadership. And you've got to have people in there that have good reputations, that are on board. And our pastor, we've got a great pastor, and he doesn't put anybody in leadership, and the whole church knows, anybody who's been around our church knows that he doesn't just stick anybody in there because there's a need. Yeah. He will wait until God sends the right one, and he knows, and he puts them in there, and there's a safety there. You have to have a safety, because people don't trust, and they're not going to trust anybody, just anybody. So you've got to make sure you've got credible people that you can trust, that are godly, that walk with God, and they are not on a different planet, or don't have a motive other than helping people to grow and be strong and healthy in the Lord. It's not about getting in a singles group and, I'm going to get married someday. It's about what's going to get you to heaven? What's going to make you healthy and grow and get strong in the Lord, so you can be healthy when that person does come along.
I'd like to piggyback on what you said, Karen, as far as the safe environment for singles ministry. And on the safeguard, our leadership team is really guarded when we have new people come in, because we have some coming in who are sharks, who are out there on the prowl, as you said, and hunting. And so we kind of can swarm around when that person is. If we're uncertain of what's going on here, we're real guarded that way. We look out for one another. We need to be doing that.
There is a trend in the singles ministries for us to be losing men. Men seem to not have an interest at time. And this is not a trend just in single adult ministries. It's a trend in the church, and it has been going on for hundreds of years. Because it's simply that that men have to be challenged. I want to challenge the men who are watching this, perhaps, who are involved in a singles ministry, to know that you have a unique place in single adult ministry. You have a unique place to be a man that is a leader, to offer a place of safety, to protect the weaker gender, and God has placed you there to be a person of integrity. And if you will take your role as a leader, as a male leader, above your desire for marriage, make that your higher priority above your desire for marriage, the ladies in single adult ministries will see that, they'll reflect on that, they will appreciate that, they will be attracted to that spiritual impulse. And you will be used by God and be blessed as well someday. It's a great thing to find a man who takes singles ministry seriously as a spiritual calling.
It really is. And in the leadership training video that we have on the website, when we put that one together, I remember talking about the fact that men will attract and retain women, both genders, men and women, better than women will attract and retain both genders, because women want to see men in leadership and men want to see men in leadership. So we're not talking a lot about leadership here today, but it is a good point you make, Craig, that men need to step up and take their opportunity to get involved in some leading capacity. Anything else you see, other ministry trends that we need to hit on before we end?
Well, I think, Dennis, there's one thing that I'd like to add to what Craig said and Darcy, is that those of you who desire to be leaders, you feel called to this ministry, and also what Karen had mentioned too, is that there's a strong evangelistic aspect to this ministry. And one of those things is that all of you who love singles ministries have single friends that you work with, that you live next door to, that you go to the store, that you see at the store, at community events, at school events. And it's a wonderful way to bring them into the realm of knowing Christ in a safe environment, and a place where they can grow in Christ, and have the sense that you're really doing something wonderful for the kingdom of God. You're reaching out with your own faith. So we can't overlook that. So, but it also adds that you've got to live a lifestyle that is pleasing to God. And so I think we all profit when we can do that.
I think that there's a slogan that is in the financial world that you probably have heard. It goes, "The trend is your friend." Well, let me tell you that the trend is not necessarily your friend if you follow the trend. But if you will use the trend to identify what needs to change and what you can speak into, it can be your friend. And if we want a trend that goes opposite the culture of the world, we see that trend, we speak into it into the church, we redefine what the ministries in the church can be. And in that sense, the trend can lead us and it can guide us by the power of God. We can use that trend to be creative and to change the church through the single adult ministry. What a great opportunity it can be.
I think we would all agree that a church program format changes today are far different than they were 30 years ago, and it shows the importance of knowing the cultural changes, being culturally relevant, but yet biblically correct. We don't want to compromise biblical values and principles, but we do need to be informed about the cultural changes and trends, because they do affect our single adult ministries. This has been a good discussion. You've identified a lot of personal and ministry trends, family, societal trends. We hope it's been helpful to you. And take a look at some of the other issues and other videos that we've done on the site there. regarding single adult ministry. We want to help and bless you. Feel free to call these people. Their address, their name, their email and phone number are on the national site under National Team, singles.ag.org. It's been good talking with you today. Thanks.